Ambassador Jake Morrison walked through the tall silver halls of the Galactic Council building on Station Alpha Prime. His black shoes made soft clicking sounds on the smooth metal floor. The walls around him glowed with a soft blue light that came from crystals grown by the Valdari species. Jake had been walking these same halls for 12 years now, and he was tired of it all. Today was supposed to be different. Today, the Council would finally vote on letting humans expand to new worlds beyond their current 12 colonies. Jake carried a thick folder filled with papers that showed how peaceful humans were and how much they could help other species. He had spent months preparing for this moment. The main council chamber was huge. It had seats for representatives from 47 different alien species. The ceiling was so high that Jake could barely see it. In the center of the room was a large holographic display that could show star maps and other important information. Jake took his seat in the section marked for newer species. This section was at the back of the room, while the older and more powerful species sat near the front. Counselor Vexhai of the Creche began speaking. The Creche looked like giant insects with 4 arms and green shells covering their bodies. Vexhai's voice came through a translator device that made his clicks and buzzes sound like words humans could understand. The human request for expansion rights has been reviewed by the senior council members, Vexhai said while his compound eyes looked down at Jake. We have serious concerns about allowing such a young and aggressive species to spread further into the galaxy. Jake felt his heart sink. This was the same thing they had said last year and the year before that. He stood up slowly and pressed the button that would let him speak to the entire council. Counselor Vexhai, with respect, humans have been part of this council for 50 years now, Jake said. We have followed every rule and every guideline you have given us. We have shared our technology freely with other species. We have helped solve conflicts between different worlds. What more do we need to prove? A low humming sound came from the Nethian section. The Nethians were beings made of gas that lived inside special containment suits. Their humming was how they showed disapproval. Jake had heard that sound many times before. Counselor Zekmuth of the Valdari spoke next. The Valdari looked like tall humans made of living crystal. When light hit them, they sparkled like diamonds. Young Morrison, the concern is not about what humans have done, but about what they might do. Your species builds weapons very quickly. You fight wars among yourselves even now. How can we trust you not to bring this violence to other worlds? Jake wanted to shout, but he kept his voice calm. Counselor Zekmuth, humans stopped fighting major wars over 60 years ago. Yes, we have disagreements, but we solve them through talking now, not fighting. And our weapons are only for defense against pirates and other threats. Defense weapons that could destroy entire planets, interrupted Counselor Thizes of the Aquatic League. Thizes spoke through a water-filled helmet that covered her fish-like head. Your fusion missiles could crack a world in half. Your plasma cannons could boil away oceans. This is not normal for a species so young. Jake looked around the chamber. He could see the same expression on most of the alien faces. Fear mixed with disgust. They saw humans as dangerous children who needed to be watched and controlled. This was exactly what Captain Lisa Hayes had warned him about before this meeting. Lisa was waiting in the observation deck above the main chamber. She commanded the human escort ship that had brought Jake to this station. Lisa had told Jake that the other species would never accept humans as equals no matter what they did. Jake had hoped she was wrong, but now he was starting to think she was right. Perhaps we should discuss the guided development proposal, said Counselor Prime Yithver. Yithver was from the oldest species in the galaxy. His people had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. When he spoke, everyone else listened. Jake felt cold fear run through his body. The guided development proposal was something that had been whispered about for months. It would put humans under the direct control of older species. Every decision about human colonies and human technology would have to be approved by the Council. First, the proposal is simple, Yithver continued. Humans will remain in their current territory. Any new colonies must be approved by a committee of senior species. Human military development will be monitored and limited. Human research into dangerous technologies will be supervised. This will continue until humans prove they are truly ready for full membership in galactic society. Jake stood up so fast. His chair fell backward. You want to make us prisoners in our own space. You want to control everything we do. This is not partnership, this is slavery. It is protection, Vexai clicked back. Protection for you and protection for the galaxy. Humans are simply too young and too dangerous to be given full freedom. Jake looked up at the observation deck where Lisa was watching. Even from this distance, he could see the anger on her face. She had been right all along. The aliens would never treat humans as equals. They would always see them as dangerous children who needed to be controlled. I call for a vote on the guided development proposal, HFY announced. The voting began immediately. One by one, the species cast their votes. The Kresh voted yes. The Valdari voted yes. The Nethians voted yes. Even some of the smaller species that humans had helped in the past voted yes. Only 6 species voted no, and they were all minor powers with little influence. Jake watched in horror as his worst fears came true. Humanity was being placed under the control of aliens who feared them. 50 years of peaceful cooperation meant nothing. 50 years of sharing technology and knowledge meant nothing. All that mattered was that humans were different, and that scared the older species. The proposal passes by a vote of 38-6 with 3 abstentions, HFY announced. The human territories will now be under guided development status. Effective immediately, Jake gathered his papers slowly. His hands were shaking with anger and disappointment. He had spent his entire adult life trying to build bridges between humans and aliens. He had learned dozens of alien languages. He had studied alien cultures until he knew them better than his own. And none of it mattered. Jake walked to the center of the chamber where a podium waited for final statements. The entire council fell, silent as he approached. They expected him to protest or to beg for mercy. Instead, Jake did something that shocked everyone present. The United Earth Federation formally withdraws from all diplomatic negotiations with the Galactic Council, Jake said in a clear, strong voice. We reject the authority of this body to govern human affairs. We will handle our own expansion and our own development from this point forward. Good day. Jake turned and walked toward the exit. Behind him, the council chamber erupted in confused voices. Species that had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years had never seen anything like this. No one had ever simply walked away from the council before. As Jake reached the door, he activated his emergency communicator. The message he sent was short, but it would change everything. Protocol 7 authorized. Full withdrawal begins now. The message went out on quantum channels to every human embassy and outpost in the galaxy. Within hours, every human diplomat would pack their bags and head home. The age of human cooperation with the galaxy was over. The age of human independence was about to begin. Admiral Ben Parker sat in the command center deep beneath the mountains of Colorado. The room was filled with screens showing star maps and communication channels from across the galaxy. Red lights flashed on his main console as the emergency. Message from Ambassador Jake Morrison came through the quantum network. Ben read the message 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. Protocol 7 meant complete withdrawal from all alien contact. It was a plan that had been developed in secret over many years, but nobody thought it would ever be used. Ben pressed his thumb against the security scanner and spoke into his headset. All stations, this is Admiral Parker. Execute Protocol 7 immediately. Repeat, execute Protocol 7 now. Within minutes, every human embassy across the galaxy received the same coded message. In the Kresh Industrial Sector, Ambassador Carol White was meeting with factory managers when her communicator buzzed. She read the message and her face went pale. Without saying a word, she stood up and walked out of the meeting room, leaving the insect-like Kresh staring at each other in confusion. On the Valdari homeworld, Dr. Amy Collins was in her laboratory, studying crystal growth patterns. She had spent 15 years learning how to help the crystalline beings grow better food crops. Her work had increased their harvest by 300% and made her a hero to millions of Valdari farmers. When the Protocol 7 message reached her, she looked around her lab one last time. Then she began packing her research notes into sealed cases. Her Valdari assistant Zekelin watched in confusion as Amy loaded decades of work into transport containers. "Dr. Collins, what are you doing?" "We have the new seedling experiment starting tomorrow." Amy looked at the crystalline being who had become like a daughter to her. "I'm sorry, Zekelin, but I have to go home now. Take care of the experiments as best you can, but you cannot leave now. The harvest season begins next week. Without your techniques, the crops will fail, Zekelin. Crystal body flashed with colors that showed panic and fear. Amy felt tears in her eyes, but she kept packing. She could not explain what was happening because that would violate security protocols. All she could do was leave behind detailed instructions and hope the Valdari could figure things out on their own. Similar scenes were happening on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Commander Rick Adams led the evacuation of human technicians from the Nethian gas mining stations. These humans had designed the equipment that let the gas-based aliens harvest fuel from their homeworld's atmosphere. Without human supervision, the mining output would drop by 60% within weeks. The Nethians tried to stop the humans from leaving. "You cannot abandon your posts," hummed their supervisor through his containment suit. "The contracts you signed require 6 months' notice for departure." Rick looked at the alien through his helmet visor. "The contracts are void. All human personnel are to return to Earth space immediately. This makes no sense. Why would you leave such profitable work?" "We pay your people very well for their services." Rick did not answer. He finished loading the last transport ship with human workers and their equipment. As the ships lifted off, he could see Nethian supervisors floating around in panic. They had never bothered to learn how the human-designed machinery actually worked. They had been content to let humans handle the technical details while they managed the business side, back on Earth. President Helen Carter called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Federation Council. The council chamber was packed with representatives from all human colonies and territories. The room buzzed with worried conversations as people tried to understand what was happening. President Carter walked to the podium and the room fell silent. She was a tall woman with gray hair and serious eyes. She had been president for 8 years and had always supported cooperation with alien species. Today she looked angry and determined. "Fellow humans, today marks the end of an era. For 50 years we have tried to be good neighbors to the species of this galaxy. We have shared our knowledge freely. We have helped solve their problems. We have followed their rules even when those rules were unfair to us." The president paused and looked around the room. "In return, we have been treated like dangerous children who cannot be trusted. Today, the Galactic Council voted to place humanity under supervised development. They want to control where we can live and what we can build. They want to monitor our research and limit our growth." Angry voices rose from the audience, but the president raised her hand for silence. "I have authorized the complete withdrawal of all human personnel from alien territories. Every ambassador, every scientist, every worker is coming home. We are done begging for scraps from their table." Commander Lisa Hayes stood up from her seat. She had returned from the council station just hours earlier. "Madam President, what about the aliens who depend on human expertise? The Valdari food systems will collapse without our agricultural techniques. The Nethian mining operations will fail without our engineers." President Carter's expression did not change. "That is no longer our concern, Commander. They made their choice when they voted to control us instead of accepting us as equals. Now they will learn what it means to lose human cooperation." Dr. Kevin Mills raised his hand. He was the head of the Quantum Research Division and one of the smartest humans alive. "Madam President, many alien species use our quantum communication network. If we shut it down, their civilizations will be cut off from each other. Then they should have thought of that before trying to make us their vassals," the president replied. "As of midnight tonight, all quantum communication channels will be restricted to human use only. Let them go back to their old slow methods of talking across space." The room erupted in surprised voices. The quantum communication network was humanity's. greatest gift to the galaxy. It allowed instant communication across thousands of light years. Most alien species had abandoned their old communication methods years ago. Because the human system was so much better, President Carter continued speaking over the noise. We are also activating the closed-door protocol. All human colonies will cease external communications except with other human worlds. No alien ships will be allowed in human space without special permission. We will focus on our own development, without interference from species who see us as threats. Admiral Parker's voice came through the communication system from his command center. Madam President, the evacuation is proceeding ahead of schedule. We estimate that 90% of our people will be back in human space within 72 hours. Excellent work, Admiral. What about the aliens who are asking questions? They are confused and starting to panic. Many are demanding explanations, but our people are following orders to say nothing. The Kresh are particularly upset because their antimatter production facilities are shutting down without human technicians. President Carter nodded. Good, let them figure out how much they really need us. Senator Greg Foster from the Mars colony stood up. Madam President, I support this action, but we need to think about the consequences. Some smaller alien species have been good friends to humanity. Should we abandon them too? The President considered this question carefully. Any species that wishes to maintain relations with humanity may do so through direct bilateral agreements, but they cannot remain part of the Galactic Council. If they want to work with us, they must choose. Over the next few days, human ships arrived at every human world carrying evacuated personnel and equipment. The returning humans brought with them detailed knowledge of alien technologies and weaknesses. They also brought stories of confusion and growing panic among the alien species they had left behind. Captain Susan Wright commanded one of the evacuation fleets. She reported to Admiral Parker that several alien governments had tried to prevent human ships from leaving their space. The Aquatic League actually sent warships to intercept us, Admiral. They backed down when they saw our escort destroyers, but they were serious about trying to stop us. Did they give any reasons? Parker asked. They said losing human expertise would cause economic collapse in their territory. Apparently 60% of their underwater cities use human-designed life support systems. Without our technicians to maintain them, millions of their people could die. Admiral Parker felt a moment of sympathy for the aquatic aliens, but then he remembered the vote in the council chamber. That is unfortunate, Captain, but they should have considered the consequences before trying to put us under their control. The withdrawal continued for another week until every human had returned from alien space. The galaxy suddenly felt much emptier and quieter. For the first time in 50 years, humans were completely alone with only themselves for company, but they were not planning to stay isolated forever. They had plans that would shock the galaxy and change everything. 3 weeks after the humans left, the galaxy was falling apart. Counselor Zekmuth of the Valdari stood in his crystal palace watching the morning sun shine through his transparent walls. The light that once made him feel peaceful now filled him with worry. His people were starving. The food shortage had begun just 5 days after Dr. Amy Collins and her team departed. The crystal crops that fed billions of Valdari were dying in the fields. Without human agricultural techniques, the plants were not getting the right nutrients. The Valdari farmers had watched humans work for years, but they never learned the complex calculations needed to balance soil chemistry. Zekmuth activated his communication device and tried once again to contact Dr. Collins. The message that came back was the same automated response he had received for weeks. All human communications with non-human species have been suspended indefinitely. On the other side of the galaxy, Counselor Vexhai of the Kresh was facing an even worse crisis. The antimatter production facilities that powered Kresh civilization had shut down completely. Without human technicians to monitor the delicate fusion processes, the reactors had automatically gone into emergency shutdown mode. Now billions of Kresh lived in darkness as their cities ran out of power. Vexhai had ordered his best engineers to restart the reactors, but they could not understand the human control systems. The mathematical formulas that humans used were too complex for Kresh minds to follow. Every attempt to restart the reactors failed, and some attempts caused dangerous explosions that killed dozens of workers. The Kresh leader sent desperate messages to every human world asking for help. The responses were all the same. The United Earth Federation is not accepting diplomatic communications at this time. The Nethians were suffering too, but in a different way. Their gas mining operations on 17 different worlds had stopped working properly. The atmospheric processors that collected fuel from gas giant planets were producing only 30% of their normal output. Without human maintenance, the complex machinery was breaking down. Counselor Theises floated in her water-filled office, reading reports from Nethian mining supervisors. Each report was worse than the last. Equipment failures were happening every day. Production quotas were not being met. Some mining stations had been abandoned completely when their life support systems failed. The worst part was that the Nethians had the instruction manuals that humans had left behind. But the manuals were written in human technical language that was almost impossible for other species to understand. Phrases like quantum flux calibration and antimatter containment protocols meant nothing to alien minds that thought in completely different ways, but the real disaster was the quantum communication network. When humans shut down their system, the galaxy lost its ability to talk across vast distances instantly. Trade ships that depended on constant communication with their home bases were now flying blind through space. Many ships had already been lost because they could not call for help when pirates attacked them. The galactic stock exchange had closed after just 2 days without quantum communication. Traders could not coordinate deals between different star systems. Banks could not transfer money across space. The entire galactic economy was grinding to a halt. Admiral Kestar of the Aquatic League watched his underwater cities slowly dying. The life support systems that kept millions of his people alive were failing one by one. Human engineers had designed these systems to work perfectly in the crushing depths of ocean worlds. Without human maintenance, the delicate balance of pressure and oxygen was breaking down. Emergency crews of aquatic engineers worked around the clock trying to fix the failing systems. But every repair they made seemed to cause 2 new problems. The human technology was too advanced for them to understand properly. They were like children playing with tools meant for adults. The minor species that had always depended on larger civilizations for protection were in complete panic. The Zephyrians had built their entire defense network using human weapons systems. Now those weapons were shutting down because no one knew how to maintain them. Pirates and raiders were already moving into Zephyrian space knowing that their defenses were failing. The crystalline monks had used human meditation chambers to enhance their spiritual practices. These chambers used quantum fields to help the monks reach higher levels of consciousness. Without human technicians to calibrate the quantum generators, the chambers were becoming dangerous. Several monks had already been injured when the fields became unstable. Even worse was happening on the frontier worlds where humans and aliens had worked together for decades. Mixed colonies where humans and aliens lived side by side were falling apart. The alien residents did not know how to operate the human-built infrastructure that kept their communities running. On the mining world of Kepler-7, the alien population was trapped underground when the human-designed elevator systems failed. The elevators used advanced gravity manipulation technology that no alien species had ever mastered. Without human technicians to fix them, thousands of alien miners were stuck miles below the surface with limited food and air. Back at the Galactic Council Station on Alpha Prime, emergency meetings were being held every day. The great chamber that had once echoed with confident speeches about controlling humanity now buzzed with panicked discussions about survival. Counselor Prime Yuthver looked older than his 10,000 years as he read reports from across the galaxy. His ancient species had seen civilizations rise and fall, but nothing had prepared him for this kind of collapse. The humans had not attacked anyone or destroyed anything. They had simply taken their knowledge and left. Yet the galaxy was crumbling faster than if a war had been fought. How could we have been so wrong about them? asked Counselor Multai of the floating cities. Her people were known for their wisdom and long-term thinking, but even they had failed to understand how important humans had become to galactic civilization. We saw them as a threat because they were different, HFY replied sadly. We thought their rapid advancement meant they would conquer us. Instead, they shared everything freely. We mistook generosity for weakness. Intelligence reports were making the situation even more frightening. Spy satellites at the edge of human space had detected massive construction projects. The humans were not just hiding in their territory, they were building something big. Energy readings suggested industrial activity on a scale never seen before in the galaxy. What are they building out there? Asked Counselor Vexhide during one emergency session. His people were dying in the dark while humans seemed to be thriving in isolation. We do not know, admitted HFY. Our intelligence networks depended heavily on human cooperation. Without their help, we are blind to what they are doing. The truth was that the Galactic Council's spy networks had never been very good at watching humans. Human encryption technology was too advanced and human counterintelligence was too effective. For 50 years, the Council had relied on human cooperation to monitor human activities. Now that cooperation was gone and they had no idea what humanity was planning. Trade routes that had connected the galaxy for thousands of years were breaking down. Without quantum communication to coordinate shipping schedules, cargo ships were arriving at empty ports or colliding with each other in space. The great merchant fleets that had carried goods between star systems were grounded because their navigation systems had been designed by humans. Some species tried to restart their old communication methods, but decades of depending on human technology had made them forget how their ancient systems worked. Technical manuals had been thrown away or lost. Engineers who knew the old ways had retired or died. The galaxy had become completely dependent on human innovation without realizing it. The most frightening realization was that humans had never demanded payment for most of their help. They had shared quantum communication technology freely. They had given away agricultural techniques that could have made them rich. They had provided medical knowledge that saved billions of alien lives and asked for nothing in return, except friendship and respect. Instead, the galaxy had treated them like dangerous children who needed to be controlled. Now those children had grown up and moved out of the house. The parents were discovering that they could not survive without the help they had taken for granted. The age of easy galactic cooperation was over. The age of consequences had begun. 6 months had passed since the humans left and the galaxy was dying. Counselor Prime HFY sat alone in his private chambers staring at reports that grew worse each day. 3 entire species had declared bankruptcy. 17 worlds had been abandoned due to system failures. The great galactic civilization that had existed for thousands of years was crumbling. Like an old building, the emergency council session that morning had been the most desperate yet. Counselor Vexhide of the Creche had begged the assembly for help. His people were living in primitive conditions without power or technology. Many Creche had died from cold and hunger as their advanced cities became uninhabitable. The proud insect warriors who had once commanded respect across the galaxy now looked like broken refugees. We must contact the humans somehow. Vexhide had clicked through his translator. My people are dying in darkness while human worlds shine with light we help them build. But it was Counselor Zekmuth who brought the most terrifying news. The Valdari had sent spy ships to watch the edges of human space. What they found there defied explanation. The humans were not just surviving their isolation. They were expanding at impossible speed. Our scouts report 12 new human colonies. In systems we thought were uninhabitable, Zekmuth had announced to the shocked council. These worlds are being terraformed in months instead of centuries. The humans are using technologies we have never seen before. HFY had demanded to see the spy footage himself. The images showed human ships that moved faster than anything in the galactic fleet. Human terraforming equipment that could transform dead rocks into garden worlds in weeks. Human construction projects that built entire cities in days. The most Disturbing discovery was that humans were expanding into territory the Council had specifically forbidden them to enter. The restricted zones around dangerous pulsars and black holes now house thriving human colonies. Areas of space that other species avoided due to radiation or gravitational anomalies were being developed by human engineers. Captain Kelly Brooks commanded the Deep Space Reconnaissance vessel Pathfinder. She was one of the best intelligence officers in the Aquatic League and had been tasked with getting closer to human space for better information. What she found when she reached the frontier changed her understanding of everything. Kelly floated in her water-filled bridge watching the sensor displays with growing amazement. The edge of human space was marked by a massive defensive network unlike anything she had ever seen. Orbital platforms the size of small moons hung in perfect formation around every approach route. Energy readings suggested weapons powerful enough to destroy entire fleets, but the defenses were not the most shocking discovery. Beyond the defensive line, Kelly could see construction projects that dwarfed anything in galactic history. Massive ring structures were being built around stars to harvest their energy. Artificial worlds larger than planets were taking shape in empty space. The humans had not just survived their isolation. They had used it to unleash their full potential. Kelly tried to get closer for better scans, but her ship was detected immediately. A human patrol vessel appeared beside her so quickly that she barely saw it move. The human ship was sleek and beautiful in ways that made her own vessel look like scrap metal. When the humans spoke to her, their communication technology was so advanced that it bypassed her ship's systems entirely and spoke directly into her mind. "Aquatic vessel, you are in restricted space," the human voice said inside her head. "Please return to your territory immediately." Kelly wanted to ask questions, but she found that her weapons and engines had been disabled remotely. The human ship had taken control of her vessel without firing a shot. She was helpless in the water, while humans demonstrated technology that seemed like magic. "How did you do that?" Kelly asked through her communicator. "Technology advances quickly when you do not have to explain every discovery to people who fear progress," the human replied. "Your ship will be released when you reach the boundary marker. Do not return." Kelly's ship was gently pushed back toward Aquatic League space by invisible forces. During the journey, she had time to analyze the sensor readings her equipment had gathered. The data was so incredible that she thought her instruments must be broken. According to her scans, human technology had advanced by decades in just 6 months. When Kelly returned to her home base, she immediately sent her report to the Galactic Council. The reaction was exactly what she expected. Most council members refused to believe her findings. They claimed that her sensors had malfunctioned or that the humans were using tricks to make their capabilities look more impressive than they really were. But Counselor Prime Ythver believed every word. His ancient species had measured technology for 10,000 years, and he recognized genuine advancement when he saw it. The humans had not been held back by their isolation. They had been held back by their need to constantly explain and justify their innovations to alien minds that could not understand them. "We have made a terrible mistake," Ythver announced during the next council session. "We thought we were protecting the galaxy from human aggression. Instead, we were protecting ourselves from human competition." The revelation hit the council like a physical blow. For 50 years, humans had been working at the speed of the slowest alien species. Every new technology had to be demonstrated and explained until even the most primitive civilizations could understand it. Every innovation had to be approved by committee before it could be implemented. Now humans were working at their own speed, and the results were terrifying. In 6 months, they had accomplished more than most species achieved in centuries. Free from bureaucratic delays and alien oversight, human creativity had exploded like a supernova. Dr. Ian Clark was a human scientist who had worked with the Valdari for 20 years before the withdrawal. The Valdari had managed to contact him secretly through old communication channels and begged him to return. The message they sent was desperate and pleading. "Dr. Clark, our people are starving without your agricultural knowledge. Children are dying because we cannot grow enough food. Please come back and help us. We will pay anything you ask." Ian read the message in his laboratory on Earth, where he was working on projects that would have been impossible under galactic oversight. His new research was advancing so quickly that he barely recognized his own capabilities. Without alien bureaucrats demanding explanations for every experiment he was making discoveries at revolutionary speed. The message from his old Valdari colleagues made him feel sad but not guilty. He remembered years of having his research delayed, while alien committees debated whether his innovations were safe. He remembered being forced to work on primitive problems because alien minds could not grasp advanced concepts. Ian sent back a brief reply. The Valdari government voted to place humans under supervised development. Until that vote is reversed, there can be no cooperation between our species. Similar messages were being sent from human worlds to desperate aliens across the galaxy. Every human who had worked with alien species received dozens of pleas for help. The responses were all the same. Humans would not return to their old roles as patient teachers and generous helpers. The minor species that had depended on council protection were beginning to panic. Without human technology to level the playing field, they were defenseless against larger civilizations. Some smaller species had already been absorbed by their more powerful neighbors. Others were sending secret delegations to human space hoping to negotiate separate peace treaties. Senator Greg Foster received one such delegation in his office on Mars. 3 representatives from the Peaceful Traders Alliance waited nervously as he reviewed their proposal. These were species that had always treated humans with respect and had voted against the guided development proposal. Senator Foster, our alliance wishes to withdraw from the Galactic Council and establish direct relations with humanity, their spokesman said. We believe the Council has made a terrible error in trying to control your people. Greg considered the proposal carefully. These species had been good friends to humanity and had tried to prevent the disaster that followed. But President Carter had been clear about the conditions for renewed cooperation. Your species are welcome to establish relations with the United Earth Federation, Greg replied. But you must completely sever all ties with the Galactic Council first. We will not work with anyone who remains part of the organization that tried to enslave us. The alien delegates looked at each other with worry. Leaving the Council meant giving up the protection and trade relationships they had built over centuries. But staying meant watching their civilizations slowly collapse without human help. We need time to consider this decision, their spokesman said. Take all the time you need, Greg replied. But understand that every day you delay is another day that human civilization advances beyond your ability to catch up. The threat was subtle but clear. Humans were not standing still waiting for aliens to make up their minds. Every month of isolation made the technology gap wider. Soon it might be too late for anyone to bridge the growing divide between human capabilities and alien limitations. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson about taking friends for granted. The species they had dismissed as too young and dangerous had become the dominant power in just 6 months. The council-thon year had passed since Ambassador Jake Morrison walked out of the Galactic Council chambers. A galaxy that existed now was completely different from the one that had tried to control humanity. Half the species that once belonged to the Council had either collapsed entirely or joined the growing human commonwealth. The remaining Council members met in emergency session every day, but their discussions had changed from arrogant lectures to desperate survival planning. Councilor Prime Yithver stood before the nearly empty council chamber. Where once 47 species had gathered in strength, now only 19 remained. The others had either died out when their technology failed or had abandoned the council to seek protection from humanity. The great hall that had echoed with confident voices now felt hollow and defeated. We must face the truth, Yithver announced to the remaining delegates. The Galactic Council as we knew it is finished. Our choice now is simple. We can continue to pretend we still matter, or we can beg the humans for mercy before it is too late. Councillor Vexhai of the Creche could barely stand upright. His once proud species had been reduced to scavenging for basic supplies. The antimatter reactors that had powered Creche civilization for thousands of years remained dark and silent. Millions of his people had died from cold and starvation during the long months without human assistance. They will never forgive us, Vexhai clicked weakly. We tried to make them our subjects. Why would they help the species that voted to enslave them? Because that is what humans do, replied a new voice from the chamber entrance. Everyone turned to see Ambassador Jake Morrison walking slowly into the room. He looked older than when he had left a year ago, but his eyes were calm and confident. Behind him walked Captain Susan, Wright wearing the uniform of the Human Commonwealth Navy. The aliens stared in shock as the two humans approached the center of the chamber. Jake had not set foot on Council Station since his dramatic departure. His return could only mean that humanity was finally ready to talk. Ambassador Morrison, Yithver said carefully, we are honored by your presence. We have many things to discuss. Jake looked around the half-empty chamber and felt a mixture of sadness and satisfaction. These were the same aliens who had voted to control humanity just 1 year ago. Now they looked like broken refugees begging for help from the species they had tried to dominate. I am no longer Ambassador Morrison, Jake replied. I am now Secretary of External Affairs for the United Earth Federation. I am here because President Carter believes it is time to establish new relationships with whatever remains of galactic civilization. Captain Wright activated a holographic projector that filled the chamber with images that made the alien delegates gasp in amazement. The hologram showed the current state of human space, and it was beyond anything they could have imagined. 40-7. New human colonies sparkled like jewels across the star map. Each world was more advanced than anything the old galactic civilizations had ever built. Massive orbital habitats housed billions of humans in luxury that surpassed the greatest alien cities. Ring structures around entire stars collected energy on scales that dwarfed galactic power production. This is what humans accomplished in 1 year of freedom, Captain Wright explained. Without alien bureaucrats slowing us down, we built an empire that rivals your entire galaxy. The most shocking revelation was the size of the Human Commonwealth. The hologram showed over 30 alien species that had abandoned the Galactic Council to join humanity. These species now enjoyed technology and prosperity beyond their wildest dreams. Their worlds glowed with the light of human engineering, while Council worlds remained dark and dying. How is this possible? Whispered Counselor Zekmuth. His crystalline body had lost much of its sparkle as the Voldari faced ongoing food shortages. Your species is barely a century old. How did you advance so quickly? Jake smiled sadly at the question. We advanced quickly because we were finally allowed to work at our own speed. For 50 years we slowed ourselves down to explain every innovation to species that could not understand them. We shared our discoveries freely and waited patiently while you debated whether we were worthy of basic rights. Captain Wright manipulated the hologram to show human research facilities. When we stopped teaching others and started focusing on our own development, our progress accelerated by decades. Every month we spent in isolation was worth years of controlled development under your oversight. The display showed human ships that could travel faster than light in ways that made galactic vessels look like primitive boats. Human weapons that could destroy planets with pinpoint accuracy. Human defenses that made entire star systems impregnable. The species that had been dismissed as too young and dangerous had become the most advanced civilization in known history. What do you want from us? Asked Counselor. Thizes. The aquatic being floated in her mobility suit, which was now patched and worn. Her people's underwater cities were failing one by one without human maintenance. We want nothing from you, Jake replied. Humanity no longer needs anything the galaxy can provide. We have technologies you cannot imagine and resources you cannot match. We came here today to offer you a choice. The chamber fell completely silent as every alien delegate leaned forward to hear humanity's terms. Their civilizations were dying, and this might be their last chance for survival. You can continue pretending that the Galactic Council still matters, Jake continued. You can maintain the fiction that you are still the rulers of this galaxy. If you choose this path, humanity will respect your decision and leave you alone. We will not interfere as your civilizations collapse from their own failures, Captain. Wright added the alternative. Or you can dissolve the Galactic Council entirely and petition to join the Human Commonwealth as junior partners. You will have no authority over human affairs, but you will receive the technology and assistance needed to rebuild your worlds. The conditions were harsh, but fair. Species that joined the Commonwealth would be saved, but they would never again have the power to control or limit human development. They would become the junior partners in a relationship where humans held all the advantages. This is not negotiation, protested Counselor Multi. This is surrender, yes it is, Jake agreed. Without hesitation, you declared war on human independence when you voted for guided development. We won that war without firing a shot simply by leaving you alone. Now we are offering terms for your surrender. Yithver looked around the chamber at his fellow delegates. These were the survivors of species that had once ruled the galaxy with confidence and pride. Now they faced a choice between slow death and accepting human dominance. The irony was overwhelming. If we refuse your offer, what happens to us? Nothing, Captain Wright replied. Humanity will continue expanding and developing while you struggle with failing technology and collapsing infrastructure. In 50 years, there may be no trace left of your civilizations, except historical records in our databases. The threat was delivered calmly, but it carried absolute conviction. Humans had proven they could thrive without galactic civilization. They had built something greater than anything the galaxy had ever achieved. The species that had tried to control them now faced extinction if they continued to resist human supremacy. Over the following weeks, the remaining council species made their choices. Some proud civilizations chose to maintain their independence even if it meant eventual extinction. Others swallowed their pride and petitioned to join the Human Commonwealth as junior members. The Valdari were among the first to surrender. Counselor Zekmuth personally traveled to Earth to sign the integration treaty. His people were starving and dying while human worlds prospered beyond imagination. Pride was a luxury his species could no longer afford. The Kresh held out longer, but eventually their survival instincts overcame their warrior pride. When Counselor Vexhai signed the surrender documents, his people wept with relief. The lights would finally come back on in their cities. Some species like the Nethians chose extinction over submission. They retreated to their homeworlds and sealed themselves off from the galaxy rather than accept human dominance. Humanity respected their choice and left them alone to face whatever fate awaited them. Within 2 years, the Galactic Council ceased to exist. The Great Chamber on Alpha Prime was converted into a museum, displaying artifacts from the age when alien species had ruled the stars. Tour groups of humans and allied aliens would visit to learn about the civilization that had tried to control humanity and failed. The galaxy was now divided between the Human Commonwealth, which controlled most of the inhabited worlds, and a handful of independent species clinging to existence in the outer regions. Trade flowed along routes protected by human ships. Communications traveled through networks built with human technology. Justice was administered according to laws written by human philosophers. The age of alien dominance was over. The age of human leadership had begun. The species that had been dismissed as too young and dangerous now guided the destiny of trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. History would remember the Galactic Council's attempt to control humanity as the mistake that ended one era and began another. The lesson was carved into